A shy girl dropped her phone in the chaos of panic, unaware that the repairman, an elusive programmer who once came close to ending his life, had just read the note she meant to send before vanishing. Some connections need no names, yet they're strong enough to keep someone from leaving, and that's how the story begins. A sharp crack of glass shattered the silence of the night. The phone lay broken at her feet, its screen splintered and glowing faintly with an unsent message. "If I disappear tonight, will anyone notice?" Nina didn't cry. She just stood there, her hands trembling, not from the cold but from something far more frightening. No one was waiting for her to come home. The park was empty. Toronto at night was anything but quiet. Distant traffic, a honking horn, laughter echoing from a corner street. But where she stood, it felt like all sound had been pulled into a vacuum. She bent down and picked up the phone. A shard of glass sliced into her palm, but she didn't pull away. There was something strangely comforting in that physical sting. It was at least real. No one saw her. No one asked. And no one knew that just seconds earlier, she had been thinking of not coming back. Cut to morning. Light edged its way slowly through the curtain slats. Nina lay curled on the couch, hair tangled, lips dry, eyes wide open. She hadn't slept. Not quite awake either. On the coffee table sat the fractured phone, surrounded by scattered sticky notes, a half-full cup of cold tea, and a pair of headphones coiled like a breath caught in the chest. The message was still there. Still. Unsent. She had tapped send 3 times, then deleted it each time, as if writing the pain made it too real. Scene shift. The next morning, she walked into a tiny repair shop on the corner, weathered, quiet, with clean glass windows and a hand-painted wooden sign above the door. "We fix what others gave up." Odd. Something about that sentence made her pause for a moment. A bell chimed softly as she stepped inside. The room smelled of metal, cooled coffee, and old jazz playing faintly from a dusty radio. A man was hunched over a workbench. He looked up at the sound. Dark brown hair, sleeves rolled up, eyes a stormy grey-blue, and the thing that held Nina. His gaze didn't search or question. It simply understood. She held out the phone. "Screen's cracked," she said, voice rough and dry. He didn't ask anything. Just nodded and took the phone with the quiet care of someone tending to a wounded animal. Cut to Ethan placing the phone under the repair lamp. Everything went still. Nina sat down to wait. Her eyes wandered to an old photo on the wall, a well-worn book behind the counter. Something about the place made her not want to leave so quickly. Ethan unscrewed the back carefully. When he powered the phone on, the screen lit up, right into the message. "If I disappear tonight, will anyone notice?" His hands paused for a second. Not out of curiosity, but recognition. He had written that exact sentence once. 11 years ago, on a night not unlike this in a place long gone. He didn't look at her right away, but then softly he lifted his head. Their eyes met. No judgment. No pity. Just, "I see that. And I'm not going anywhere." Scene fades gently. He continued working. She watched him as if searching for the words she couldn't yet say. The air thickened with everything left unspoken. A while later, Ethan returned, phone restored, gleaming in his hand. The screen lit up. Not a crack left. There, typed neatly in the Notes app, was a single line he had added. Not quite a message, not quite a joke. "Everything works again, including you." She pressed her lips together. Didn't smile. But something inside. It softened. "How much?" she asked. "Free," he replied. "If you promise not to let that phone fall apart before you send what you really meant to." She looked at him. Her eyes stung, not from emotion, but from the rare, jarring feeling of being seen by someone who didn't flinch from sadness. She nodded, just once. "What's your name?" "George," he asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "No rush," he said with a small smile. "Let everything come back online first." That night, back in her apartment, Nina opened a new note. For the first time in nearly 3 Years her fingers moved, not for work, not for deadlines, but because she needed to say something to herself. Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just paused. And maybe someone just hit play again. Some things are never sent, yet they live on, quietly, permanently in the one who receives them. The repair shop was dim, lit only by the soft hum of a desk lamp. The phone screen flickered back to life, no longer cracked, yet the fall still lingered in the form of everything left unsaid. Ethan stared at the device in his hand. He tapped the notes icon gently. The screen opened. A list of drafts. Some were just a single word. Sorry. Why? Still breathing. Others ran longer, never sent, never seen. Each line a whisper from some unlit corner of her mind. Messages written perhaps to herself, or to someone who once mattered, or just to stave off the quiet ache of disappearing. Today I made it to 5 p.m. without crying. Tomorrow I'll try for 6. People say healing takes time. They didn't say how loud it would be. I want to speak, but I've forgotten the language of being heard. Ethan read slowly. Each line left a faint stain somewhere inside him, not because they were unfamiliar, but because he had written the same ones, once. Sometimes we see the message long before we see the person, and sometimes that's all we need to understand. Everything? He sat still. Outside, a soft rain began to fall against the windows. The drops blurred the grime on the glass, but didn't quite wash away the deeper marks. He turned to his laptop, opened his email, started a new message. No. Name, no subject, just a single line. If you're reading this, don't disappear. I did once. It's harder to come back than you think. He paused, unsure if she would ever read it. And still, he hit send. Sometimes saving someone doesn't require knowing their face. Just saying the right words at the right time. Somewhere else, in a quiet apartment, Nina sat with a cup of tea. Her phone lit up with a new email notification. No sender. Just a single line. If you're reading this, don't disappear. She stopped breathing. Her heart thudded once hard. Her fingers trembled. No name. No sign, but somehow she knew it was real. No one ever told me that the first step back to life isn't shouting for help. It's realizing someone whispered your name when you thought the world forgot it. Night settled gently. Over the city, rain still tapped at the glass. At the shop, Ethan wiped down the counter. His eyes drifted to the chair where Nina had once sat. His gaze was heavy but quieter now, like something inside him had found a place to rest. The lamp on the counter flickered slightly, as if it too remembered the girl who had left a piece of her soul behind. Maybe you too have a message you've never sent, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to read it more than you know. Don't go just yet. Next episode, you'll see what happens when two people finally begin to let themselves be seen. She read the strange email over and over, as if it were a fragile clue from the universe. If you're reading this, don't disappear. I did once. It's harder to come back than you think. She didn't know who had written it. No name, no trace, but something in her knew it was real. Not the kind of real you can explain, but the kind you only recognize when you've stood close enough to the edge. Words that arrive at the right moment rarely need proof. They only need to be heard. She didn't reply. But she saved it. And that night, for the first time in months, she dreamed, not a nightmare. No voices calling. No mother. Just an old wooden table, a warm cup of tea, and someone's eyes across from her, quietly listening, without asking anything at all. The next morning, her phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. You left something at the shop the other day. No rush, but if you stop by, I'll be here. She read it 3 times. No emojis, no time. Stamp. No urgency, just presence, and that was what she needed. The sky was a soft grey, the air damp enough to let her hair fall loose without effort. No lipstick, no mascara. She took her phone and stepped outside like someone unsure whether they were visiting or returning home. The bell above the glass door still chimed when she opened it. He was bent over, wiping down the counter. He didn't look up right away, but his voice came quiet, familiar. Cream-colored case, scratched at the right corner, left-handed user. I held onto it. She smiled, for the first time. In days. Not because what he said was clever, but because someone remembered a small detail no one else had ever bothered to notice. He poured tea from a thermos. Paper cup, chamomile. I guessed you weren't a coffee person, but I could be wrong. She sat down. The chair was old, the table leg marked, like a place that had learned to expect someone to stay. You sent the email, didn't you? Caught, she asked, not looking up from the cup. He didn't answer right away. An email means nothing, he said, unless the person reading it is still here. Her hands tightened around the cup. Her lips trembled, not from heat but from something unfreezing inside. When I wrote those messages, I didn't think I'd see another morning. I know. You've been there? Ethan straightened. His eyes weren't sad, but they held something that had once been sorrow deeply. Bloor Street Bridge, winter 2014. No snow, but the wind cut like knives. I stood at the edge, thought about all the people who wouldn't notice. I was gone. And then a bus passed. I saw myself in the rearview mirror, and I realized I didn't want the last time someone saw me to be from behind. She went still. Her hand rested lightly on the table. Between them was chamomile tea, but also two unfinished stories. Isn't it strange, she said, meeting someone you don't even know the name of, who's read every word. You never meant to show... It is, he said, smiling faintly, but I don't think the world runs on logic. It runs on moments, like when someone answers you at exactly the time no one else does. I'm Nina. Hi, Nina. And you are? He looked at her a beat too long, then smiled. His first true smile. Call me Ethan. You can rename me if you need to. But Ethan's real, and she hadn't planned to stay long, but she stayed. They talked about books, ones left unfinished, music, songs too full of memory to play, about her mother who made lemongrass, soup every time she had a fever, about his younger sister, who still wrote letters by hand, even though they lived 20 minutes apart. They shared their scattered pieces, not perfectly fitting ones, just ones that needed someone to know they had ever existed. When she finally stood to leave, Ethan handed her the forgotten phone case, setting it gently in her palm. Thank you, she said. There's nothing to thank me for. Thank you for staying. She stepped out of the shop and down onto the sidewalk. The wind had quieted. She slid the case back on. Her hands no longer shook. The old messages were still there, unsent, unedited, but for the first time she didn't feel the need to change a single word. All it took was a hello, a gaze that didn't flinch, a moment between two people, when no one tries to save the other, but both choose to breathe in the same silence. When Nina stepped out of the shop, Ethan stayed behind the counter for a long while, the faint scent of chamomile tea still hanging in the air. The seat where she'd sat held a soft impression in the cushion's edge. No formal goodbye, no deliberate see you soon. Just a quiet exchange of glances between two people who barely knew each other's names, but who both seemed to recognize the look of someone who had once stood at the edge of the world. Ethan braced his palms on the counter, head bowed slightly. The late light filtered through the shop's front window, catching in layers of dust, casting a thin, silent mist over the room. Her cup still sat on the table, half full. He didn't clear it away. Something in the way she'd held it. Her fingers gently circling the rim brought back a version of himself he hadn't seen in years. The version who used to wonder just before sleep whether there was any point in waking up. Ethan used to be a name people talked about. Magazine features, award lists, meetings stacked back to back. He rarely had time for lunch, let alone for noticing he was alive. Everything blurred, until one day in the middle of a board meeting he found himself staring blankly into a cold cup of coffee, unable to hear a single word anyone was saying. The next day, he didn't go back to the office. He didn't quit, didn't write a resignation email. He just vanished. That winter night, Toronto had been strangely quiet. No wind, no rain, only a hollow stillness, as if the city itself had forgotten how to make sound. Ethan stepped out of his apartment like he might return after a short walk. But he didn't. Not right away. He stood on Bloor Street Bridge, staring down at the dark water below. No one else on the bridge. No voice calling after him. No buzzing phone in his pocket. No one. The feeling wasn't loud, it didn't scream, it simply hushed like still water, like the silent space between slowing heartbeats. He thought he'd leave a note, some final line that meant something. But as he stood there, nothing came. And the absence of any parting thought was what scared him most. When the last bus of the night passed by, its headlights caught his reflection in the side mirror. Just for a second, he saw himself, not clearly, blurred and distant, as if looking at a stranger, and for the first time he didn't recognize the man staring back. That moment pulled him back. Not love. Not regret. Just the sudden clarity that he was still here, even if only as a shadow. The next day he sold his shares, pawned the expensive watch his mother had once given him, moved out of the sleek apartment on the 32nd floor, and started learning how to fix phones. An odd choice for someone who once ran a multi-million-dollar company. He didn't love the work for its glamour. He chose it because in a world built on complexity, this was one of the few things that could still be mended by hand. He liked the ritual, unscrewing a device piece by piece, wiping it clean, swapping a tiny bolt, replacing a worn circuit, then powering it back on, watching it light up again, as if some small part of the world could still be brought back without needing to explain why it broke. Sometimes he saw things he wasn't meant to. Unsent messages, notes soaked in, brief voice memos cut off mid-sentence, but he never opened them out of curiosity, only when something in them felt urgent, like the writer hadn't been able to face the words themselves. He hadn't known who Nina was when she first walked in, but when her phone screen lit up, and that message appeared against the black. If I disappear tonight, will anyone notice? He remembered a line he'd once written, almost identical. That's why he sent the anonymous email. Not to fix anything, not to reach out, just to place something on the table that said you were seen. And now she'd come back. She'd said her name. She'd stayed long enough to drink half a cup of tea. That was enough. More than enough. Ethan lifted the warm cup she'd left behind. He didn't wash it just yet. The soft scent of chamomile lingered in the room. Everything looked the same, but it no longer was, because today someone who almost disappeared had spoken her name out loud, and he, someone who once nearly ceased to exist, remembered who he was, because he recognized the familiar cracks in the eyes of a stranger. For the third time that week, Nina returned to the shop. Not for any particular reason. Her phone was fine, the internet worked. But when she stepped through the glass door and heard the soft chime overhead, a quiet peace settled over her, one she couldn't explain. Ethan was sorting trays of spare parts. He didn't look surprised to see her. No small talk, no polite greeting. Just a nod and the familiar gesture of pouring 2 cups of tea, a habit not yet a week old yet already stitched into the fabric of their days. She took her seat. The late autumn breeze was cool enough to justify the light jacket draped over her shoulders. She watched him work, her gaze following the deliberate, patient motion of his hands, the way he handled each tiny screw like it held some quiet purpose. "Do you think," she asked, "that sometimes we don't need someone to talk to, just someone to see us?" Ethan paused. He didn't look up right away, as if arranging something quietly inside himself. "I used to think that," he said, "that if I could just show up at the right time, maybe I could save someone with nothing more than a look. And then I realized sometimes what people need isn't a person at all." Nina frowned, waiting. Maybe what they need is a space, somewhere to pour things into, grief, thoughts, the unspoken stuff. No judgment, no interruptions. An idea flickered in her mind. "Like an app?" she said slowly, testing the word on her tongue. Ethan looked up. His eyes lit, not with the gleam of a million-dollar idea, but with the clarity of someone who'd just seen a way out through fogged glass. "Maybe," he nodded. A place where anyone can write. No name, no reason, no fear of ending. Up in someone else's inbox, Nina touched the rim of her teacup, drawing circles with her finger, the way she always did when she was thinking. And if someone happens to read it, they can send a whisper back, softly. No names, no strings. "Whisper me," Ethan said, as if the name had always been waiting. She looked at him, surprised. That name. "It just came out," he said, smiling, light and real. She went quiet for a moment. "I used to think, if something like that had existed, I wouldn't have kept everything buried in drafts for 3 years. Ethan opened his old laptop and pulled a chair close beside her. "Every app starts with a line of code," he said, "and every line of code starts with a reason that's real enough." He held out a hand to her. "Shall we write?" She glanced at the keyboard, then back at him. "I don't know anything about code." "Then write what you'd want to receive if you were standing at the edge." And so they began, one typed, one thought. The blank screen filled with simple lines, not polished, not technical. Just, "If today feels like too much, type something, you'll be heard. This app doesn't fix you, but it waits with you." Outside, the city moved on as always, but inside that little shop between two people who had once nearly disappeared, something had begun to take shape. Not a product, a possibility. Maybe they wouldn't finish. The app tomorrow. Maybe no one else would ever know it existed. But one thing was certain. For the first time in a very long time, Nina wasn't writing to release her pain. She was writing with the quiet hope that her words might reach someone else who was waiting in silence, too. If you've ever wished for a place to say something, without needing an answer, just needing to be seen, stay a little longer. Next episode, they take another step forward. Not because they're better, but because some things only need a single line to begin. The morning began with a message, not from Ethan, not from any friend, but from the place where she had sent her hope, wrapped in a small demo, a few slides, and one final note. "This app doesn't try to heal the world. Just one person, at a time." The reply came quickly, cold, mechanical. "Thank you. This idea does not align with our current investment direction. Full stop. No suggestion, no encouragement, not even the courtesy of best of luck." Nina stared at the screen, unblinking. For a few moments, every word lost its sound. Her mind went white. Her hand relaxed and the mouse slipped from her palm, rolling gently onto the floor. No one heard it but her. The girl sitting, alone in a space far too large for someone quietly breaking. She shut the laptop. Didn't savor. Dragged the Whisper Me folder to the trash. Had no second glance, had no hesitation. It all vanished as easily as if it had never been real. She had once learned how to live invisibly. And now, maybe the kindest thing to do is let everything else disappear with her. The afternoon dimmed quickly under the rain, the sky thick with grey, as if every bit of hope had dissolved into mist. She sat in silence. No lights, no music, no phone. Only the sound of the rain mixing with her heartbeat, and she wasn't sure which was slowing faster. Ethan knocked near the end of the day. The door was unlocked. He stepped in. His eyes scanned the dim room instantly. She sat on the floor, unmoving. The only light came from the kitchen, where the bulb flickered like the inside of her chest. He didn't speak right away, just set a paper bag on the table, inside a thermos of tea and a small rolled note. Then he sat, not too close, not too far, the kind of distance that didn't press, but let itself be heard if she chose to listen. After a long silence, he spoke, his voice steady, low, practiced, the voice of someone who had once learned how to talk to people on the edge. "The first time I sent a proposal for a mental health platform, it got rejected. No hesitation, no kindness, just not viable, no market." She didn't reply. But something shifted. "I cried," he said, "in the bathroom of a packed coffee shop. Then wiped my face, walked back to the table, and pretended I'd just read a stupid meme." He gave a soft, rueful laugh, the kind that tasted like salt but came out dry. "That night I opened my laptop and couldn't write a single line. I didn't want to see anything anymore. But then I opened my code editor, and typed one sentence. He slid the note toward her. She turned slightly. The warm yellow light caught her eyes, shining not from tears but from something welling behind them, not yet broken. On the paper, in clean black ink, were just 5 words. "You are not your pitch deck." She stared at the sentence for a long time, unblinking, her fingers curled slightly. "I thought maybe this time would be different," she whispered. "That if I built something from belief, at least someone would listen." Ethan nodded. "I thought so too. Then I realized this world doesn't always hear the quietest voices, even when they're the most honest. Then why didn't you give up?" She turned toward him for the first time that day, and their eyes met. "Because if I didn't build it, no one would know it mattered," he said, pausing. "And if no one keeps writing, then people like you and people like me will keep staying silent." She swallowed hard. Her heart thudded. Not from pain, but from the unexpected weight of someone standing alongside her disappointment. Without asking her to explain it, "We still have the source code, don't we?" She asked, barely above a breath. "We do," he said, smiling gently. "We always do." She stood. Her hands trembled, but her feet no longer felt heavy. He passed her the laptop. She sat down, opened the editor. The screen glowed white, blank, clean like an unopened door. She didn't write the first line of code. Not yet. Just a sentence. This time, not written to hold herself together, but for someone else. Somewhere. Who might be quietly. "Breaking 2. You don't need to be heard by the world. Just one person, one time." The words appeared on the screen, unpolished. Not a line of code, but real. And for them, for now, that was enough. She didn't write another line of code that night. The single sentence remained, glowing quietly on the screen. You don't need to be heard by the world. Just one person. One time. Nina let the laptop stay open through the night, as if seeing that sentence each time she stirred would be enough to remind her why she was still here. The next morning, as sunlight brushed the edge of the curtain, she did something she hadn't done in a long time. Stood in front of the mirror and brushed her hair, no makeup, no styling. Just a few gentle strokes, enough to remind herself that maybe, just maybe, she was still someone worth seeing, even on days that weren't beautiful. She took a pair of scissors and trimmed the split ends. Not much. Nothing. Drastic. Just enough to feel like she was changing something, starting small. Ethan came by without notice. He didn't need to. When Nina opened the door, neither of them said hello, as if their presence alone had already spoken the words. He brought an old laptop, the kind only the patient still used. She poured tea. They sat at the small table by the window. Outside, the air was cool but not cold. The light slipped through the cracks and settled gently on their hands as they both placed fingers on the keyboard. "No need to write for them," she said. "Just for the person who was you yesterday," he replied. "No master plan, no timeline. Just 2 people, an idea, and the memory of sadness too big to carry alone." She drafted the first page. "What do you wish someone had said to you?" He added the confirmation message. "Message received and we're here." Still, every detail, every button was designed like a quiet embrace, not tight, not desperate, just warm enough for someone on the other side of the screen to know they weren't entirely alone. By afternoon, Nina went out. A tiny flower shop on the corner caught her eye. She bought a single sprig of lavender, not as a gift, just to place beside her laptop. A reminder that something delicate could still stand tall if it knew what it stood for. That night, she reopened the Whisper Me folder. This time she didn't delete it, didn't think of those who had dismissed it. She created a new folder instead, for one person only. The next morning, Ethan sent her a message. Someone anonymous posted, "I didn't know strangers could feel safer than family." She read it in silence. A message from no one, sent to nowhere. But somehow it felt like she'd been held, not by arms, but by understanding. They didn't promote the app. No press releases, no social media, just a single link placed quietly on a forum where insomniacs shared the kind of thoughts no one else knew what to do with. Each. Day 1 message, then 3, then 12, each one a shard fallen from someone doing their best to stay whole. And each time Nina read them, the world felt a little less indifferent, because for the first time whispers, the very things once deemed weak, had become shelter. Nina started writing her old blog again. No name, no calls to share, just short reflections. About her mother, about the sound of rain in that upstairs room, about the first time she saw Ethan's eyes and thought, he's been where I am. One night, she received a message through the app. I don't know who you are, but thank you for leaving just enough light for me to find my way back. She didn't need to know who sent it. It was enough to know that today someone had stayed because what they wrote had been received. An app didn't have to save the world. It just had to hold onto one person, one time each day. That morning, the sky held no sun, but it didn't rain either. It was the kind of soft, muted light that feels like someone cracking open the door after a long sleep. Nina's apartment was quiet. Inside the silence, the hiss of a kettle beginning to boil, the clink of a spoon against ceramic, and a single exhale, not heavy but deep. She had just published her first blog post in years. No real name, no bio, no profile picture, just a few simple lines written to someone, not knowing who, just knowing she had to write them like lighting incense in an empty room. Not so anyone could smell it, but so she could remember that the past still lingers in the air. Since the night she typed that first line of "Whisper Me" beside Ethan, nothing had changed overnight. The app wasn't famous, no articles, no buzz, but every day someone still logged in, someone still sent the words they couldn't say out loud, and someone responded, gently, anonymously, with quiet understanding. Over time, she stopped opening the app with expectation. It became more like a ritual, like washing her face, like steeping tea, like a way to remind herself, I chose to stay. I'm still staying. She and Ethan didn't talk much these days, but whenever they met, there was no need to ask, are you okay today? They just sat in silence together, sometimes shared a message they'd come across on the app, like a small gift left quietly at someone's door with no pressure to unwrap it. And then that morning, when the first light slipped through the grey, her phone buzzed once. The screen lit up. A single notification from the Whisper Me system. I'm still alive. Thank you for that. She read it over and over, not because she didn't understand it, but because each time the feeling landed in a different part of her. The first time, surprise. The second, recognition. The third, tears. She hadn't cried in a long time, not like this, not from pain, but from the feeling of finally being seen. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to exist. When Ethan arrived around noon, she didn't say anything right away. She just poured an extra cup of tea and placed it on the table beside his usual chair. When he removed his coat and sat down, exhaling softly, a breath perfectly in sync with hers, she told him. He didn't say much, just nodded deeply. I used to think, he said, that we had to do something big to change someone's life. But now I think, maybe all we need is to keep a space still enough for someone to hear themselves. She didn't speak, but her eyes glistened, not with sadness, with knowing. That afternoon they reviewed the back end together. Nearly 800 users, no names, no chats, no images, nothing stored for more than 24 hours, just a message sent, message received, a whisper, a glance without a face. She read a few recent posts. Someone had lost their mother, someone had lost their job, someone had lost their way. And all of them described their pain in a language so familiar, she could have sworn she'd written those words herself. Last year, last week, this morning, standing at the sink. She printed one line out and taped it to her fridge. I don't know why I'm still here, but today I don't want to leave. That evening, Ethan texted her a screenshot, a new anonymous submission. I found this app at 3 a.m. when there was only one option left, and now I'm still breathing. Nina read the line, then walked to the window. For the first time in months, she pulled the curtains all the way open, unafraid of the light. She stood there for a long time, not thinking, not waiting, just standing, still here, still seen. If you're reading this, maybe you've thought, no one sees me. Maybe you've never said it, never written it down, never dared to hit send. But if you're still here, we see you. Thank you for being here, with Nina, with Ethan, with the ones who don't have names but do have stories. Stories that may never become books, never trend online. But if one person, just one, hears it, that's enough. If you see yourself in these stories, hit follow so you don't get lost again, because here no one shouts, but everyone listens. Thank you, truly, for walking with us to the final chapter. And if you've ever needed to be seen, stay just a little longer. One person, one time, one look is enough to begin again.